The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across Skidoo's dusty Main Street as Beatrice Ellis clutched the doctor's written verdict in trembling hands. Once the pride of Montana Territory's dance halls, now she sat broken in more ways than one, her future as shattered as the bones in her legs. It was 1878, and the mining boomtown that had welcomed her with open arms 3 years prior now seemed to mock her with its raucous music spilling from saloon doors. "Miss Ellis, with time you'll walk again," Dr. Holloway had assured her, his kind eyes betraying his doubt. "But dancing? I'm afraid those days are behind you. The stagecoach accident 2 months ago had changed everything. The same wheels that had brought her west from Boston now lay splintered at the bottom of Rattlesnake Gulch, along with her dreams of opening her own dance hall. The coach driver and 2 passengers hadn't survived. Sometimes Beatrice wondered why she had. "I'll never dance again," she whispered to the empty room of her small rented cottage on the edge of town. The words felt like nails in a coffin. Her coffin. Dancing wasn't just what she did. It was who she was. A knock at the door startled her. Beatrice quickly wiped away her tears and adjusted her position in the chair, wincing at the pain that still radiated through her legs despite the doctor's treatments. "Come in," she called, expecting Mrs. Peterson, her elderly neighbor who often brought supper. Instead, the door swung open to reveal Sheriff Maxwell, his weathered face grim beneath his gray mustache. "Evening, Miss Ellis. Hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" Maxwell removed his hat, twisting the brim in his hands. "Well, madam, it's about your boarding situation. Mrs. Peterson told me you're 3 weeks behind on rent to Mr. Decker." Beatrice lowered her gaze. "I've written to my aunt in Boston. She'll send funds soon." "That may be, but Decker's not known for his patience." The sheriff sighed. "There's a position available, though, teaching position of sorts." Hope flickered briefly. "Teaching? But I'm not educated enough to not school teaching. The Valenti Ranch, about 5 miles outside town. Mr. Valenti's daughter is getting married come spring, and she needs instruction in proper dancing for the celebration." The cruel irony of it struck Beatrice like a physical blow. "Sheriff, you know I can't. You wouldn't have to demonstrate, just instruct." "And Mr. Valenti's offering room and board plus wages until the wedding in May." Maxwell cleared his throat. "His ranch hand will be in town tomorrow with a wagon. You could ride out with him if you're amenable." Desperate for any solution, Beatrice nodded reluctantly. "Thank you, Sheriff. I'll consider it." After Maxwell left, Beatrice dragged herself to the small mirror above her washstand. At 24, her face remained youthful despite the strain of recent months. Her honey-brown hair hung limply, no longer styled in the elaborate curls she'd once worn for performances. The spark had gone out of her blue eyes. How could she teach someone else to dance when her own legs betrayed her? It seemed a cruel joke, yet the alternative destitution in a frontier town was worse. Morning arrived with harsh clarity. Beatrice packed her meager belongings into a single trunk, her movements slow and painful. The laudanum the doctor prescribed helped dull the worst of it, but she used it sparingly, fearful of developing the same dependency she'd witnessed in others. Mrs. Peterson helped her to the general store where she was to meet the ranch hand. "You'll be back in no time," the old woman assured her, though neither of them believed it. Beatrice waited outside, sitting on her trunk, watching the townspeople hurry past with barely a glance her way. How quickly they'd forgotten her performances at the Silver Dollar, when miners would shower the stage with gold dust and nuggets. A wagon pulled up, dust swirling around its wooden wheels. The man who jumped down moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled beneath his hat, He approached with confident strides. "Miss Ellis." His voice was deep with a slight drawl, not the Italian accent she'd expected from someone working for a man named Valenti. "Yes," she replied, extending her hand formally. "Nathan Valenti," he said, taking her hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "I'm here to bring you to the ranch," surprise registered on her face. "You're Mr. Valenti's son," a smile creased the corners of his eyes. "His only son, yes. Pa sent me to fetch you since I was coming to town for supplies anyway." He wasn't what she'd expected. Most ranchers' sons she'd encountered were rough around the edges, but Nathan Valenti had an air of quiet refinement beneath his practical clothes and sun-bronzed skin. "Let me help you up," he said, moving toward her trunk. "The trunk first," she instructed, gesturing to her walking cane. "I'll need assistance with the step." Understanding crossed his features, but to his credit, he showed no pity. He loaded her trunk, then returned and offered his arm. "Lean on me as much as you need." The simple kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Beatrice had grown accustomed to either awkward avoidance or excessive sympathy. Nathan's matter-of-fact assistance was refreshing. The journey to the ranch passed in relative silence. Nathan occasionally pointed out landmarks or shared bits of local history. Beatrice found herself studying his profile when he wasn't looking: the straight nose, strong jaw, and eyes the color of a summer sky. "Have you lived in Skidoo long?" she finally asked as they turned onto a well-maintained dirt road. "Born and raised," he replied. "Pa came out from Pennsylvania in '49 for the gold rush. Found something better than gold, though good land, in my mother." A shadow crossed his face. "We lost her 5 years ago to influenza." "I'm sorry," Beatrice offered, understanding loss all too well. "Life goes on," he said simply. "My sister Gabriella's wedding has given Pa something to look forward to. He wants everything perfect for his little girl." As they crested a hill, the Valenti ranch came into view. A sprawling main house of timber and stone stood proudly amidst several outbuildings. Corrals held horses of exceptional quality, and cattle dotted the distant pastures. This was no struggling homestead but a prosperous operation. "It's beautiful," Beatrice murmured. "Home," Nathan replied with obvious pride. As they pulled up to the house, a young woman burst through the front door, her dark curls bouncing with each step. She rushed toward the wagon, her face alight with excitement. "You must be Miss Ellis." "I'm Gabriella Valenti, well, soon to be Gabriella Cooper. I'm so grateful you've come." Her enthusiasm was infectious, reminding Beatrice of herself before the accident. Behind Gabriella appeared an older man with silver-streaked black hair and the same striking blue eyes as Nathan. Antonio Valenti moved with the authority of a man accustomed to command, but greeted Beatrice with genuine warmth. "Welcome to our home, Miss Ellis. My daughter hasn't stopped talking about your arrival since Sheriff Maxwell sent word." Nathan helped Beatrice down from the wagon with the same careful consideration he'd shown earlier. She was painfully aware of her awkward movements and the way her left leg dragged slightly. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Valenti," she said formally. "Though I should be honest, I can instruct your daughter, but I cannot demonstrate the steps myself." Antonio waved away her concern. "Nathan told us about your condition. We're simply grateful for your expertise. Besides, my son is quite accomplished himself. He can demonstrate while you instruct." Beatrice glanced at Nathan in surprise. He shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Pa insisted we all learn proper dancing, said it was part of becoming civilized. Mother taught us," Gabriella explained. "She was from Philadelphia society before she married Pa." Nathan was her best student, though he'd never admit it. "I get by," Nathan mumbled, busying himself with Beatrice's trunk. That evening, after settling into a comfortable guest room, Beatrice joined the Valentis for dinner. The conversation flowed easily, with Gabriella chattering about wedding plans and her fiancé, Thomas Cooper, the son of a neighboring rancher. "We'll host the first lesson tomorrow after breakfast," Antonio announced. "The great room has the most space." "I should assess Miss Valenti's current abilities first," Beatrice suggested. "Then we can determine what needs the most attention." "Call me Gabriella, please," the young woman insisted. "And I warn you, despite Mother's best efforts, I have 2 left feet. Poor Thomas may end up with broken toes at our wedding dance." Everyone laughed, but Beatrice felt a familiar ache in her chest. She excused herself early, claiming fatigue from the journey. In the privacy of her room, she removed the special leather braces the doctor had fitted to her legs. The ugly scars beneath stood as permanent reminders of her broken dreams. She'd once been called the songbird of the West for her graceful movements and sweet singing voice that accompanied her dances. Now the songbird's wings were clipped. Morning brought a clear, crisp day. After a hearty breakfast, they gathered in the great room where furniture had been pushed aside to create an open space. Beatrice seated herself in a comfortable chair, her cane within reach. "First, I'd like to see what you already know," she instructed Gabriella. "Mr. Valenti, Nathan, if you would partner with your sister." Nathan stepped forward with surprising eagerness. "Which dance should we demonstrate?" "Let's start with a simple waltz." Gabriella's assessment of her own abilities proved accurate. Though she knew the basic steps, she moved stiffly, counting aloud and watching her feet. Nathan, by contrast, moved with natural grace, guiding his sister patiently despite her missteps. "You dance beautifully," Beatrice observed when they finished. The words caught in her throat, tinged with envy. Nathan looked away, almost shyly. "Our mother's influence." "Gabriella, you're thinking too much," Beatrice explained. "Dancing isn't just about the steps, it's about feeling the music, letting it move through you." "That's what Mother always said, but I never understood what she meant," Gabriella sighed. "Let me demonstrate," Nathan offered unexpectedly. He approached Beatrice and extended his hand. "May I?" Confusion must have shown on her face because he quickly added, "You can remain seated." "I just want to show Gabriella what you mean about feeling the music." Understanding dawned. Beatrice placed her hand in his, and Nathan knelt beside her chair. With one hand holding hers and the other lightly touching her shoulder, he began to hum a waltz. "Close your eyes," he instructed both women. "Gabriella, watch how even without moving, Miss Ellis can dance with just her expressions, her hands, the way she holds herself." Beatrice closed her eyes, allowing herself to be carried by the melody of Nathan's surprisingly melodious voice. She swayed slightly in her seat, her free hand rising and falling with the invisible currents of the music. For a brief, beautiful moment, she was dancing again. When she opened her eyes, Nathan was watching her intently, something unreadable in his expression. Gabriella was staring open-mouthed. "That was beautiful," the younger woman whispered. "I've never seen anyone look so, transported by music." Beatrice withdrew her hand from Nathan's, suddenly self-conscious. "That's what you need to find within yourself," she said briskly, returning to her role as instructor. "Now, let's work on your frame." The lesson continued, with Beatrice directing and occasionally demonstrating arm positions while seated. Nathan acted as Gabriella's partner, patiently repeating steps until his sister began to improve. Days settled into a routine. Mornings were spent in lessons. Afternoons found Beatrice either resting or sitting on the wide front porch watching ranch life unfold. Nathan was often visible working with horses in the corral, his skilled hands and quiet voice transforming even the most spirited animals. One evening, about 2 weeks into her stay, Beatrice lingered on the porch after dinner. The spring air was cool but not uncomfortable, and the vast Montana sky was ablaze with stars. "Mind some company?" Nathan's voice came from the doorway. "Not at all," she replied, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. He settled in, stretching his long legs before him. "Gabriella's improving quickly, thanks to you. She's determined, and that's half the battle." A comfortable silence fell between them. Nathan seemed content to simply sit beside her, watching the night sky. Finally, he spoke. "Sheriff Maxwell told us about your accident. Must have been terrible." Beatrice stiffened. "It was." "I'm sorry if I've overstepped," he said quickly. She sighed, relaxing slightly. "No, it's all right. Everyone in town knows the story anyway." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I was returning from Helena, where I'd been negotiating to buy property for my own dance hall. The stage took Rattlesnake Pass too fast. The driver was new to the route." The memories flooded back, the terrifying lurch as wheels left the road, the screams of the other passengers, the sickening series of impacts as the coach tumbled down the ravine. "They found me pinned beneath the wreckage. My legs were. Well, the doctor said it's a miracle I can walk at all." "And before that you performed." "At the Silver Dollar, yes. Nothing improper," she added hastily. "Classical dancing, some European folk dances. I sang too." "I know," Nathan said quietly. "I saw you perform once about a year ago. I was in town delivering cattle to the railroad. You were luminous." The unexpected compliment warmed her cheeks. "Thank you. Do you miss it? Performing, I mean." "Every day," she admitted. "Dancing wasn't just something I did, it was who I was." "Was?" Nathan turned to face her, his expression serious. "You still have that light in you, Miss Ellis. I see it when you teach Gabriella, when music plays and you think no one's watching how your hands move." Beatrice looked away, uncomfortable with his perception. "It's kind of you to say, but let's be practical. I'll never dance again, not the way I once did." "Maybe not the same way," he agreed. "But perhaps a new way." Before she could respond, a shout came from inside the house. Antonio appeared at the door, looking concerned. "Nathan, Cooper just rode in. There's trouble with the north pasture fence. Looks like someone cut it deliberately. Some of the horses got out." Nathan was on his feet immediately. "I'll saddle up." "I'll come too," his father said. "Miss Ellis, please excuse us." The men departed quickly, leaving Beatrice with an unsettled feeling. Deliberate cutting of fences suggested more than casual mischief. The next morning, Beatrice learned that several valuable horses had been stolen. The sheriff had been notified, but hopes of recovery were slim. "Raiders from the north," Antonio explained grimly at breakfast. "They've been hitting ranches across the territory." "First time they've targeted us, though." Gabriella was distraught. "They took Starlight. She was to be my wedding present from Thomas." The day's lesson was subdued, Gabriella's heart clearly not in it. Beatrice noticed Nathan's absence and inquired after him. "He's riding the boundaries with some hands, strengthening fences," Antonio explained. "He'll be gone a few days." Those days stretched longer than expected. A spring storm blew in, turning trails to mud and delaying Nathan's return. Beatrice found herself watching the road for his return more often than she cared to admit. When he finally appeared, he was leading a familiar white mare. "Starlight," Gabriella cried, running to meet her brother. "How did you find her?" Nathan dismounted stiffly, and Beatrice noticed he favored his right side. "Tracked the thieves to their camp near the border. They weren't expecting company." Antonio embraced his son. "You took a risk, boy." "Calculated risk," Nathan corrected. "I had Cooper and his boys with me, plus our hands." Thieves scattered like quail once they realized they were outnumbered. Only later, when they were alone on the porch, did Nathan admit to Beatrice how dangerous the confrontation had been. One of them got a little too close with a knife, he said, touching his ribs. Just a scratch, though. You could have been killed, she admonished, surprised by the intensity of her concern. Maybe, he acknowledged, but some things are worth fighting for. His eyes held hers steadily. Family, home, things that matter. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had voiced. The following day, Nathan appeared at Gabriella's lesson with an unexpected proposition. I think it's time Miss Ellis had a partner other than me for demonstration, he announced. Thomas is coming for dinner tonight. We should surprise him with Gabriella's progress. His sister clapped her hands in delight. Oh, what a wonderful idea! Beatrice nodded approval, but Nathan wasn't finished. And after dinner, I thought we might have some music. Been too long since we used Mother's piano. Miss Ellis, Gabriella mentioned you sing as well as dance. Would you honor us with a song? Put on the spot, Beatrice hesitated. I haven't performed since, please, Gabriella pleaded. Thomas loves music and it would make the evening perfect. Unable to refuse, Beatrice agreed, though anxiety knotted her stomach at the thought of performing again, even informally. Thomas Cooper arrived just before sunset, a pleasant-faced young man with honest brown eyes who clearly adored Gabriella. Dinner was a lively affair, with Antonio sharing embarrassing stories of his children's youth, much to their chagrin. After the meal, they gathered in the great room. Nathan sat at the piano, surprising Beatrice with his skill as he played for Gabriella and Thomas to dance. Your daughter's a natural, Mr. Valenti, Thomas declared after their waltz, though everyone knew it was far from the truth. The couple had managed adequately, with only minor missteps, a vast improvement from Gabriella's initial awkwardness. Credit goes to Miss Ellis, Antonio replied, raising his glass to Beatrice. A remarkable teacher. And now, Nathan announced, Miss Ellis has agreed to favor us with a song. He moved to the piano bench. Any requests? Heart pounding, Beatrice rose with the aid of her cane and made her way to the piano. Beautiful dreamer, she suggested softly. I know it well. Nathan nodded and began the gentle introduction. Beatrice closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath. When she began to sing, her voice was hesitant at first, then gained strength as the familiar comfort of music embraced her. Beautiful dreamer, wake unto me, starlight and dewdrops are waiting for thee. The room fell away. There was only the music, the piano, and Nathan's steady presence beside her. Her hands moved expressively with the melody, her upper body swaying slightly. When the final notes faded, silence held for a heartbeat before enthusiastic applause broke out. Beatrice opened her eyes to find everyone beaming at her and Nathan looking at her with unmistakable admiration. That was exquisite, he said quietly, for her ears alone. Thank you for the accompaniment, she replied. You play beautifully. Another, he suggested. They continued with several more songs, the mood lightening with popular tunes that had everyone joining in. By evening's end, Beatrice felt more alive than she had in months, despite the persistent ache in her legs. As Thomas was preparing to leave, he pulled Nathan aside for a conversation that appeared serious from their expressions. After his departure, Nathan sought out Beatrice on the porch where she'd gone for fresh air. Thomas brought news, he said without preamble. The horse thieves we drove off are looking for revenge. They've been seen in Skidoo asking questions about the Valenti ranch. That sounds concerning, Beatrice replied, alarmed by the grim set of his mouth. Pa wants to send Gabriella to stay with her aunt in Bozeman until this blows over. I think you should go with her. I'm sure that's not necessary. Surely the Sheriff Maxwell, has his hands full with a mining dispute. Besides, we're too far out for quick help. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. I'd feel better knowing you were safe in town. The genuine concern in his voice touched her, but Beatrice shook her head. "I've faced danger before, Mr. Valenti. I won't run at the first sign of trouble." A hint of a smile softened his features. "Stubborn, aren't you?" "Determined," she corrected. "There's a difference." Nathan studied her for a long moment. "I misjudged you when we first met. Thought you were just another city woman who'd wilt in the face of frontier hardships. And now I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." The simple sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter. "Doesn't mean I won't worry, though." Before she could respond, a rider appeared at breakneck speed, pulling his lathered horse to a stop in front of the house. One of the ranch hands Beatrice recognized. "Mr. Valenti," the man shouted. "Fire at the south barn." Nathan was moving instantly. "Get my father and tell the men to bring water." Beatrice watched in horror as flames became visible on the horizon, orange fingers reaching into the night sky. The entire household sprang into action, with Antonio organizing the ranch hands while Nathan raced toward the blaze. Against all advice, Beatrice made her way down the porch steps, her cane sinking slightly into the soft ground. She couldn't fight the fire, but she could help organize supplies and tend to anyone injured. The night became a blur of activity. Water buckets passed from hand to hand, shouts and the terrified whinnying of horses, the acrid smell of smoke permeating everything. By dawn, the fire was finally contained, though the barn was a complete loss. Miraculously, all the animals had been saved. Nathan, face blackened with soot, found Beatrice distributing coffee to exhausted ranch hands. "You should be resting," he chided gently. "So should you," she countered, noting the exhaustion etched in his features. "Was it them? The horse thieves?" He nodded grimly. "Found tracks leading north. Too many for us to pursue safely." He accepted the coffee she offered. "Pa's posting extra guards. We should be safe enough for now." For the next week, the ranch operated under a state of watchful tension. Lessons continued for Gabriella, but now Nathan or another ranch hand was always within shouting distance. The wedding plans proceeded, though with subdued enthusiasm. One afternoon, Nathan found Beatrice alone in the great room, seated at the piano though not playing. "May I join you?" She nodded, making room on the bench. "I was just remembering songs my father used to play. He taught music in Boston before he died." "Is that where your love of dance came from?" "Partly. Mother was a seamstress for the theater. I grew up backstage watching dancers. By the time I was 10, I knew that's what I wanted to do with my life." She placed her fingers on the keys but didn't press down. "Father never lived to see me perform professionally." "He would have been proud," Nathan said softly. Beatrice turned to face him. "Why are you so kind to me, Mr. Valenti?" "Nathan," he corrected. "And kindness isn't difficult when it's sincere." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a possibility. Slowly, Nathan reached out and covered her hand with his. "When I first saw you perform in Skidoo, I couldn't look away," he admitted. "There was such joy in your movements, such freedom. I'd never seen anything like it. I rode home that night thinking about the dancer with the sunshine hair and wondering if I'd ever see her again." Beatrice's breath caught. "And now here I am, broken and useless." "No," he said firmly, his hand tightening on hers. "Different, perhaps, changed, but never useless, never broken in the ways that matter." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. They moved to the window to see Antonio riding in with Sheriff Maxwell and several deputies. "Something's happened," Nathan said, helping Beatrice to her feet. Outside, the lawmen were dismounting. Maxwell's expression was grave as he greeted them. "Miss Ellis," he said, touching his hat brim. "Didn't expect to find you here still." "Sheriff," she acknowledged. "What brings you out this way? Got word that Barton's gang is headed this direction, he explained. They've hit 2 more ranches since yours, getting bolder each time. Thought you should know they might circle back here. Antonio's face hardened. We're ready for them. Even so, might be prudent to send the women to town for a spell, Maxwell suggested. Barton's not known for his gentlemanly treatment of ladies. Nathan looked at Beatrice, concern evident in his eyes. He's right. You and Gabriella should go with them when they ride back. This time, Beatrice didn't argue. The gravity of the situation was clear from the men's expressions. I'll pack my things. As she turned to go inside, Nathan caught her elbow. I'll come for you when it's safe, he promised, his voice low. We have unfinished business, you and I. The intensity in his blue eyes sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. I'll hold you to that, Nathan Valenti. Within the hour, Beatrice and Gabriella were loaded into the sheriff's wagon with their essential belongings. The parting was hurried, with Antonio embracing his daughter and clasping Beatrice's hand warmly. You'll always have a place here, he told her, surprising her with his generosity. Nathan's goodbye was briefer but more charged with unspoken emotion. He helped her into the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist longer than necessary. Be safe, she whispered. You too, Songbird, he replied, using the stage name she'd once performed under. Save a dance for me. The bitter irony of his words must have shown on her face because he leaned closer. I mean it, Beatrice. When I come for you, we'll dance together one way or another. The journey to Skidoo was tense, with Maxwell and his deputies scanning the horizon constantly for signs of trouble. Beatrice found herself in the unfamiliar position of comforting Gabriella, who alternated between worry for her family and excitement about her approaching wedding. Thomas promised to check on them daily, she told Beatrice, and he says we'll still marry in May, no matter what. Of course you will, Beatrice assured her, though her own thoughts remained with the ranch and with Nathan. Skidoo welcomed them with curious stares and whispered conversations. The sheriff arranged rooms for them at the hotel, a significant improvement over Beatrice's former lodgings. Courtesy of the Valentis, Maxwell explained when she expressed concern about the cost. Antonio was quite insistent. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Beatrice resumed Gabriella's lessons in the hotel's small dining room after hours, but her heart wasn't in it. Each day brought news or lack thereof from the ranch. Barton's gang had been spotted 10 miles north. A neighboring ranch had driven off would-be rustlers. Thomas Cooper visited to report that the Valenti ranch remained vigilant but unmolested. A week stretched into 2. Spring advanced, bringing warmer days and wildflowers to the hills surrounding the town. Gabriella's wedding was now just 3 weeks away, and the bride to be vacillated between joy and anxiety. What if they can't come? She fretted one evening after their lesson. What if Pa and Nathan are still dealing with those awful men? Your father wouldn't miss your wedding for anything, Beatrice assured her. Neither would Nathan. As if summoned by his name, the hotel door opened and Nathan himself strode in, removing his hat as he scanned the room. When he spotted them, the smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after a storm. Nathan, Gabriella rushed to embrace her brother. Is everything all right? Is Pa with you? Everything's fine, he assured her, returning her hug while his eyes sought Beatrice over his sister's shoulder. Pa's coming tomorrow with the wagons. It's safe to return home. Relief washed over Beatrice, though she remained seated, unwilling to showcase her awkward rising in front of the other hotel guests. Nathan approached after disengaging from his sister. Miss Ellis, he said formally, though his eyes conveyed much more. I hope we find you well. Quite well, thank you, she replied with equal formality. We've been continuing lessons as best we can. Excellent. He glanced around the crowded dining room. "I wonder if you might join me for a short walk. The evening is pleasant, and I have a matter to discuss with you." Curiosity overrode her reluctance to navigate the town's uneven boardwalks. With Gabriella's assurance that she would be fine at the hotel, Beatrice accepted Nathan's offered arm. Outside, the spring evening was indeed beautiful. The setting sun painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold, while the town itself settled into its nightly routines of saloon revelry and family suppers. "What happened with Barton's gang?" Beatrice asked as they walked slowly down the main street. U.S. Marshals caught up with them trying to cross into Canada with stolen horses, Nathan explained. "There was a fight. Barton was killed and the rest surrendered." "Thank goodness," Beatrice breathed. "So it's truly over, it is." Nathan guided her to a small bench outside the church. "Rest a moment," she sat gratefully, the ache in her legs a constant reminder of her limitations. "You mentioned a matter to discuss." Instead of sitting beside her, Nathan remained standing, suddenly looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Yes, well, it's about your plans after Gabriella's wedding." Beatrice's heart sank. She'd been avoiding thoughts of the future, knowing her position at the ranch was temporary. "I suppose I'll look for work in town. Perhaps the school needs an assistant." "Or," Nathan said, producing a folded paper from his vest pocket, "you might consider this." She accepted the document curiously. Unfolding it revealed a property deed for a building on Skidoo's Main Street. "I don't understand," she said, confused. "It's the old mercantile that closed last year. Sturdy building, good wooden floor." Nathan finally sat beside her, his eyes intent on her face. "It would make a fine dance school," understanding dawned slowly. "A dance school? But I can't." "You can teach," he interrupted gently. "You've proven that with Gabriella. There are dozens of young people in this territory who'd benefit from your knowledge. Mining families who have struck it rich want their daughters to have refined skills. Young men who could use some grace and discipline. But the cost." She looked at the deed again. "I couldn't possibly afford this. It's already paid for." He held up a hand when she began to protest. "Consider it an investment. We'll be partners if you're willing." "Partners?" The word held implications that made her pulse quicken. "Business partners to start," he clarified, a hint of color rising in his cheeks. "Though I'd hope, in time." Beatrice stared at him, scarcely believing what she was hearing. "Nathan Valenti, are you courting me?" His laugh was both nervous and relieved. "Rather clumsily, it seems." "But yes, Beatrice Ellis, I am courting you. Have been since the moment you taught my sister to feel music instead of just count steps. But my condition is part of who you are now," he finished for her. "Not all of who you are, but part of your story, like my mother's death is part of mine. Like this town and this land are part of us both." Tears pricked at Beatrice's eyes. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, the school, the partnership." He took her hand. "Me." She looked down at their joined hands, then back to his hopeful face. "I'll consider it on one condition." "Name it. Dance with me, right now." Confusion crossed his features. "Here." "But you promised we would dance together one way or another." Determination firmed her voice. "I want to see if you meant it." Understanding dawned in his eyes. Nathan stood and extended both hands to her. When she took them, he helped her to her feet, then kept hold of one hand while his other arm slipped around her waist, supporting her weight. "I can hum something if you like," he offered. "No need," she replied. "I hear music all the time in my head." Slowly, gently, he began to sway with her. It wasn't a proper dance, her feet barely moved, and she leaned heavily against him, but they were moving together to music only they could hear. A few passers-by glanced curiously at them, but neither paid any attention. Beatrice closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of Nathan's body supporting hers, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek as she rested her head on his chest. "I didn't think I'd ever dance again," she whispered. "There are many ways to dance," he replied softly. "Some require fancy footwork. Others just need heart." When they finally stilled, Beatrice looked up to find Nathan watching her with such tenderness that words failed her. Instead, she rose on tiptoe, balancing against his strength, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as he responded. When they parted, both were breathing unevenly. "I accept," she said simply. "Which offer?" he asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "All of them, the school, the partnership." She touched his cheek. "You." On Gabriella's wedding day in May, the Valenti ranch was transformed. Lanterns hung from trees, tables groaned under the weight of food, and musicians played lively tunes as guests celebrated the union of two prominent ranching families. Beatrice watched from a decorated chair as Gabriella and Thomas took their first dance as husband and wife. The bride moved with newfound confidence, her earlier clumsiness replaced by modest grace, not the polished performance of a trained dancer, but the sincere expression of a happy young woman. "You did that," Nathan said, appearing at Beatrice's side with 2 glasses of champagne. "She never would have managed so well without you." "She had a good foundation," Beatrice replied, accepting the glass. "Your mother taught her well. I just helped her find the joy in it." Nathan settled in the chair beside her, his hand finding hers between them. On her finger glinted a simple gold band, not yet a wedding ring, but a promise of one to come once the dance school was established and running smoothly. "Are you happy?" he asked, studying her face in the lantern light. Beatrice considered the question seriously. Her legs still ached at the end of each day. She would never again leap across a stage to thunderous applause. The dreams she'd carried west from Boston had died in Rattlesnake Gulch alongside the stagecoach driver and her fellow passengers. Yet new dreams had taken root. The deed to her dance school sat in a trunk in their room, alongside architectural drawings Nathan had commissioned. Students were already inquiring about lessons. And beside her sat a man who saw beyond her limitations to the music that still lived in her soul. "Yes," she said, squeezing his hand. "I am genuinely happy." As if on cue, the band struck up a slower tune, the waltz they had practiced countless times with Gabriella. Nathan set aside his glass and stood, extending his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Ellis?" Without hesitation, Beatrice placed her hand in his. As he had done so many times before, Nathan supported her weight effortlessly, guiding her into the gentle sway that had become their own special form of dancing. Other couples moved around them in more traditional steps, but none danced with more genuine feeling. With Nathan's strength complementing her grace, Beatrice found herself moving more freely than she had since the accident, her upper body flowing with the music even as her steps remained small and cautious. "You're doing wonderfully," he murmured against her hair. "We're doing wonderfully," she corrected. "That's the secret, isn't it? Finding the right partner." As the music continued, Nathan guided her to the edge of the dancing area where they could move at their own pace without concern for other couples. In the soft glow of lantern light, with the vast Montana sky stretching overhead and the future stretching before them, they created their own dance, not the one Beatrice had once performed, but something new, something uniquely theirs. "I love you, Beatrice Ellis," Nathan said as the music began to fade. "And I love you, Nathan Valenti," she replied without hesitation. "Thank you for teaching me new steps." Their lips met as the final notes drifted away, sealing a promise that had begun the moment he helped her into his wagon that first day in Skidoo. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, two people who had found in each other the perfect rhythm, the perfect balance, the perfect dance. 5 years later, the Valenti Dance Academy occupied a prominent corner of Skidoo's Main Street. What had begun as a modest school had grown into a cultural touchstone for the rapidly developing town. Miners and merchants, ranchers and railwaymen sent their children to learn not just dancing but deportment, social graces, and music. Beatrice Valenti stood at the large windows overlooking the street, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their second child grew. Their 3-year-old son, William, sat at the piano picking out simple tunes under the watchful eye of his grandfather Antonio, who had moved to town after turning the ranch operations over to Thomas and Gabriella. "They're here," William cried as a familiar wagon appeared. Nathan was returning from the ranch with Gabriella and her twin daughters, who at 4 years old were among the youngest students at the academy. Beatrice made her way carefully to the door. Her walking had improved significantly over the years, though she still used a cane for longer distances. Nathan's patient encouragement and the exercises they developed together had strengthened her legs beyond what Dr. Holloway had ever thought possible. "There's my beautiful wife," Nathan called as he helped the children down from the wagon. At 34, he had lost none of his vigor, though responsibilities had added a few dignified silver strands to his dark hair. "And there's my handsome husband," she returned, accepting his kiss as he bounded up the steps to meet her. His hand automatically went to her belly, where he was rewarded with a strong kick. "Active today?" he asked with a grin. "Like her mother used to be," Beatrice replied. They both believed this child was a girl, though Nathan insisted he would be equally delighted with another son. Inside, William was already showing his cousins a new dance step Beatrice had taught him. Though just a child, he had inherited both his father's natural coordination and his mother's love of movement. "He's going to be better than both of us," Nathan observed proudly. "That's what every parent hopes," Beatrice replied, "that their children will dance further than they ever could." As the children played and Antonio began a simple tune on the piano, Nathan took Beatrice's hand. Without words, they moved together in the dance that had become as natural as breathing to them, both her grace complementing his strength, his patience matching her determination. In the late afternoon light streaming through the windows of the academy they had built together, surrounded by the family they had created, they danced. Not with the wild abandonment of youth, but with the deep, abiding love of two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed to be complete. Beatrice had once believed she would never dance again. Now she knew the truth: she would dance every day of her life, just in ways she had never imagined before the accident that had seemed to end her dreams, but had actually led her to Nathan and to a life richer than any stage performance could provide. As the music continued, and their unborn child kicked between them, Beatrice and Nathan Valenti danced on, writing with each step a love story that had begun with broken dreams but would continue, unbroken, for all their days to come.